All protocols observed. Everybody, good morning. Vijana oye. Wazee mpo? Wazee ni wachache sana leo. You know, in most meetings when you go to, most of the times the younger people are always very few, but right now, right here, we have 99.6% of the participants being young, below 35. Jipigeni makofi. And I think that is why our agenda and our theme for this meeting is from noise to voice to impact. From noise to voice to impact. Tumepiga kelele sana, 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 sana. But I think time comes when we need to ask ourselves difficult questions and ask ourselves, where are we as a generation? Are we having any impact? Are we being felt? Are we making any change in our society? Is Kenya any better with us or without us? And as I begin, I just wish to really appreciate all of us for making it to come to this place, to take part in this conversation. So, young people, you've traveled, kuna wale walisafiri usiku, others started the journey yesterday in the morning, and you're here right now. Thank you very much for that commitment, because then it shows we're no longer just sitting back and waiting for things to happen and things to be done for us, but we want to be at the center of decision-making processes. Anything that happens must happen with us and for us. So thank you very much for making that time. And this time, I also just wish to pay a special appreciation to the people here who are not young, but are youthful. Because we have the older generation, we have the younger generation, and that is why intergenerational dialogue is really important. There are things they have seen, there are things they have done. There's a life they have lived that we want to learn from and emulate from them. So the older generation who are here, thank you very much for making time to just come, share your story with us, share your journey with us, challenge us to be better individuals and better leaders. So the conversations that we're going to be having are going to be honest, candid, and we will have open forums where we'll have conversations about what is happening at our county levels, what is happening in your county. Are you participating effectively in decision-making processes? Are you making your voices heard? Are the county governments, for instance, meeting your aspirations and your needs? And are you enabling them to be able to do that or not? So, and how do we effectively champion devolution and youth participation in devolution and in governance? Talking about leadership, many years ago, I came across a book called By the Future. By the Future by a Ghanaian called Mensa Otabil. And the book basically talks about paradigms of leadership. He says in the book that there are two paradigms of leadership: the farmer paradigm and the hunter paradigm. The farmer paradigm, leaders who operate in the farmer paradigm kind of leadership, are the leaders who get into an institution and sow seeds. You know what farmers do. You sow a seed, you water it, you groom it, you do everything, you nurture it patiently. It takes long, but then time comes when you get to harvest. And most of the time, what you sow, you get to reap much more than what you sowed. And what farmers do, they get the produce and then add value and then store for tomorrow. And then we have this other paradigm of leadership called the hunter paradigm, where I'm sure you all know the story of the hunter-gatherer, where you wake up in the morning as a hunter, you take your tools and you go to the bush to go look for prey. You get your prey, come back home, roast it, eat it for the day, sleep, wait for tomorrow. Go back again, get the prey, kill the prey, come back home, eat. Nothing about tomorrow, nothing about the future. It's now, today, what I'm able to get. And in most cases, you'd find that, for instance, leaders who operate from that paradigm would get into an institution and within no time, it collapses. Because they get in with the mentality that, yeah, so what is there for me to get? What is there for me to eat? And just complete. And then, institutions collapse. So which paradigm of leadership are you operating from? Just a moment for reflection. And as a country right now, I think we are at an interesting tipping point. I feel like we have many hunters than farmers. We have people who get into institutions, not just in government parastatals or agencies, but religious institutions, community organizations, and other institutions that we have, and basically plunder them and collapse them. We have very few leaders who are intentional about nurturing the future, about thinking about tomorrow, about saying, here is where we are today, this is what we have, what about the future generations? How do we secure our future? A lot of times people say young people are the future. The reality is that young people are both the present and the future. They are the leaders of today and the partners of tomorrow. But tomorrow is not secured if we will sit back and join in the plundering of, let's say, resources and theft and all that. There's a time I was in a village somewhere doing some work, and we were interacting with both the older and the younger generation, old men, some councils of elders, women, young people. And an old man called me aside and said, my generation has failed. If you guys will sit back and wait for us to save you and save the nation, then you've lost it. My generation has failed. And we have failed because we're not showing a good example. And we didn't think about you, and we're not thinking about you guys. So you must arise and think about yourselves. Think about your tomorrow, your children, and your children's children. And there's this author, Frantz Fanon, of The Wretched of the Earth, who famously talked about this quote that we quote a lot of times, that every generation must rise from total obscurity, discover its mission, and either fulfill it or betray it. So what is our mission as a generation? Are we going to sit back and waste our time and lose the moment for change, or are we going to rise up to the occasion and just make the best and say we are a generation that is going to be counted as having done something, as having thought about the future and the future generations? That is really, really, really important. And it is sad, but we've been looking at the papers, at the media, in our own families, in our own religious institutions, in our own civil society organizations. And it's as if something is dead, like the soul of the nation is almost dead. The level of corruption, in fact, it's not corruption, it's theft. Wheezy. I think we sort of sanitize it by saying corruption, but maze, you ni wheezy, as in outright, wheezy. The other day, I watched in the news a teacher having molested some 3 boys, another teacher having sexually assaulted 700 girls in a school. There's a church whose pastor impregnated a couple of women and girls, took away money. There are families that are broken and separated, and street families are growing by the day. And of course, you know, the dreams and hopes of the farmers dying because of corruption, people who are not farmers supplying, in the name of supplying maize, getting paid millions of monies, and farmers just staying there with their produce. We know about the companies and industries that are collapsing. Yet we're busy importing stuff, importing clothes, importing sugar, importing all these things. So what if we decided to change the paradigm and said, what can we do as a country to create jobs, build those industries, because that is what will be the answer for us. Not just for us today, but for the future generation, for our nation. We do not have any other nation. And the people who are engaging in corruption, this is actually for all of us to reflect, because it's everywhere. it's for all of us to reflect. How do we make a shift? How do we make a shift? Because we have to elevate our nation. Our nation is everything. Kenya is bigger than anything. Kenya is who we are. And so we have to begin to think and have conversations even later on during this symposium about how do we elevate Kenya to a level where it needs to get to. We've been the hub for the longest time, but if we continue with this trend, we're going to lose our space in the global arena. Yet we have you young people who are doing amazing stuff in your various counties, through ICT, through sports, running your own businesses, starting institutions. You're doing amazing work. We can't let this to just die, to just go. We can't let our nation just go down with a bad name and with bad things happening. No. I think time comes when then we have to say no and say we're moving from making noise and just complaining and saying, oh, this is happening, this is not happening, to a point where we say, how can we contribute? How do we become more responsible as citizens, make our voices count, and take our nation to the next level? If we sit back, maybe in a few years' time, we won't have a nation to call home or a nation to call Kenya. This is a call to our generation. Each and every one of us, ask ourselves, what can we do to begin to reignite the conversation about national values, moral imagination, and having the moral courage to do the right things, not just doing things right, but doing the right things the right way, with the right motive. It starts with us, in our institutions, in our student unions, in our political parties, in our civil society organizations. It begins with us. So this, in as much as is a platform for conversations around devolution and all that, it's also a platform to go back to the origin, where it all began. Who are we as a people? Who are we as a generation? What is different about us? What is going to be counted as having been different about us? And later on, we're going to be learning from our keynote speaker, His Excellency Kivuta Kibwana. I'm sure you know about his story. He'll share that with us and just inspire us to be the best we can be and produce results, because leadership is nothing without results. And results leads to legacy. In our own small ways, how do we learn from the people who went before us and begin to replicate the good things they have done, the good way they have lived their lives, to be able to replicate it in our own lives and make our lives better? So this is a very important conversation. As I wind up, please let us stand up to be counted as having made a difference in our generation. And let's have candid conversations later on in the day. Thank you very much, and God bless you.